Welcome to the latest edition of the OSU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by OSU beat writer Kelly Hines. Kelly, always good to see you. Always good to chat a little OSU football. So if I'm an OSU fan, I got to be feeling pretty good right now. They were solid on both sides of the ball against a pretty decent non-conference opponent.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was just seeing those improvements from week 1 to week 2. That's definitely the trajectory that you want to be on. But I definitely felt like given the opponent and given specific things that seem to be addressed, I felt that was a really good win. Anytime you beat a Power 5 opponent, that's going to be a good win. But specifically to address some of the defensive issues and then to get the run game more established, I felt like all the way around that was a good week 2 performance. So the schedule, I think, is setting up nicely for there to be some progress made and shown during September, to have now an FCS opponent that brings some different things, but you're able to continue working on the things that you need to work on this time of year. And then you have an open date, and then Big 12 play starts at Baylor. So it kind of seems like the schedule, the way it's setting up, it will be a good thing for OSU.
We'll talk about the defensive line a bit later, but you mentioned week 1 to week 2 improvements. How was communication in your mind better in the secondary against Arizona State versus the week before? It's kind of an issue the week before against Central Michigan.
And I think some of that was just because there were, different guys and new roles for them and a new defensive coordinator. But I definitely felt like there were fewer moments in the game that, it seemed like there was a miscommunication or a missed assignment or something like that. I mean, it did still happen a couple of times, but especially early in the game. But it seemed like as the game wore on, that those guys settled more into their roles. And that's just what you want to see is not just progress week to week, but in-game adjustments. I think that's so huge, especially on defense. So as the game progressed, it definitely seemed to be less of an issue. And obviously, when you have a defensive line like OSU has, that makes everything a lot easier on defense. But even in the secondary, it just seemed like those guys were starting to come together as a group better than in week 1.
So about this defensive line, we talk about it every week for good reason, and they really kind of imposed their will in the second half. That's kind of what we're going to see from them, right? Like, this is how have they been so far?
Yeah, I mean, Tyler Lacy has been so impressive, and hearing Mike Gundy talk about what that decision was for Tyler to come back for an additional year when he probably could be making money this year. He continued to work on the things that he needed to work on, and I think you're seeing just a very experienced, very dominant college player, really taking it to that next level. And I think that's always exciting to see. I know it's early in the year and the opponents kind of dictate some of that, but the ceiling is so high for him. And I mean, he looks like an NFL player now. And you just, I think it's going to be a storyline for this season, just how he continues to take that next step. And, he's going to be making some money real soon. He's going to be able to continue to show scouts what he can do. He's already done that, but, I think it can be difficult sometimes when players come back for an additional year to continue to make that progress. So I think he's going to be an example of a guy who, it's going to work out well for. You have to think, I know it's still early, but I have to think that it's going to continue to go the direction that's going. But, the rotation at defensive end is kind of interesting when they have so many really good options. But we don't talk a ton about the interior defensive linemen because we're so caught up in what the guys on the edge are doing, but those guys are really solid, and they have depth there too. It's just they're holding down the fort when the guys on the edge are getting the sacks and the TFLs. So I think seeing that group work together, Greg Richmond, who played at OSU as their position coach, I just feel like that is such a solid group across the board. And, we don't talk as much about the guys inside, but, Brendan Evers, obviously that's a huge part of OSU's identity. But I feel like those guys deserve as much credit as the guys on the edge.
I forgot Greg Richmond was their position coach.
I'm here to inform you of things.
I appreciate all reminders because I'm old and I forget things very easily.
Okay.
Let's talk about Arkansas Pine Bluff for a second. You figure this will be a game where a lot of people might see some action. Anybody you're looking to who might kind of have a breakout game or anything like that?
I think more just, you're gonna see, most likely, if things go according to plan, you're gonna see most players get in the game. So I think if Gunnar Gundy comes in and they allow him to throw a pass, that might be something to keep an eye on. Ollie Gordon, he's already, he has had 5 carries in 2 games, which isn't a lot, but he's shown some really good things. I think everyone would love to see a little bit more of him. But I think it's also one of those situations that maybe the first and second team guys, maybe they'll get, as much, they'll probably get a lot of play in this game too. You want to see more from Dominic Richardson. You want to see the defense get more comfortable with its first and second team guys. So I don't think, in the second quarter, if OSU's up big, I don't know that it'll happen that early on, but there may be a lot of rotating. It just, kind of just depends on how things go. But I would say probably Gunnar Gundy is probably the one that I would most want to see a little bit more of. Because he needs experience for, whatever happens after this year, after Spencer Sanders. So I think it's just one of those games that it's going to be beneficial for those reserves. And as Mike Gundy talked about, we want to play our walk-ons and the guys who don't get to play as much, we want to give them opportunities whenever possible, but you still want to take things from this game because it is the last game before your conference opener. So I will be interested to see how they kind of approach that.
So Dominic Richardson obviously had a breakout game last Saturday, looked great. And I listened to his interview on the post-game radio show, and he was in a real good mood. He seemed like a real good kid to listen to. It was you could tell he was excited and sort of proud of himself, but in a humble way. It was a really cool interview. What can we expect going forward from maybe him / the running game? Because Gundy likes to sprint it around, and I would imagine Dominique's not going to get 20 plus carries a ton. But how do you see the running back position breaking down the rest of the year?
I think the most striking thing about Dominic Richardson is just how they've continued to mold him. They took a really good player and they've just continued to work with him, kind of like you would with a quarterback. Like maybe his throwing motion isn't perfect when he comes in, but he's got a really good skill set. They want him to be a little bit more elusive. They don't want him to feel like he has to run over guys. They want to keep him durable and healthy for the whole season. Because he's going to be a key part of this offense. He tweaked his ankle, in the game the other night and had to get it x-rayed and came back and he was fine, which was a huge sigh of relief because it's early in the season and that's your number one guy. So kind of dodged a bullet there, but I definitely feel like he has grown a lot. He's in that leadership role. He's the guy. So they want him to stay healthy. And they want him to continue to work on the things that they're working on with him. So, you're going to need 3 to 4 running backs who are really capable, and once you get to Big 12 play, especially, like, injuries are going to happen. Ollie Gordon has done some really good things with those 5 carries, but that's only 5 carries. So I think that they're extremely high on Ollie, but like cautiously because he is a true freshman and hasn't had a ton of experience at this level. DeAndre Jackson is a guy who his transcript issues could be resolved any day now. So would love to see how he would fit into that rotation. You have some other options for sure. Jaden Nixon, Zach Middleton, but Dominic is such a big part of that I really feel like that game Saturday was big for him. He had been wanting an opportunity to show what he could do. He'd shown that at times in his career, but to have it, in a game like that against a Power 5 opponent, I felt like that really gave him confidence. moving forward. And obviously the offensive line played great too, but to see Dominic have that game, it's kind of like now we can stop talking about this being a possibility. He went out and did it. So I thought that was hugely important in the scope of like the whole season. So possibly, I wouldn't say a breakout game for him, but I felt like that was a big game.
Yeah. All right. What's the score of this game?
Gosh. These games are a little bit unpredictable, but I definitely feel like it's going to be like 45-10, something like that. And I think OSU will pretty much immediately establish things and have a lot of success on offense. And it'll also be a good chance to get the defense more experience, more comfortability. Is that a word?
We're gonna make it a word.
That's a good word, I think. I just feel like this is a game that you can just continue to focus on yourself and what you need to accomplish. And this is only the third FBS team that Arkansas Pine Bluff has ever faced. It's the first one that's ranked. So they're not really used to these settings. They played Arkansas last year, but that was that game was played in Little Rock instead of Fayetteville. So is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. So anyway, I think this is a cool opportunity for players from an FCS school to play in a Big 12 venue. But OSU is a really good FBS team, and I think that they will handle this game just fine.
All right, we'll leave it there for this week.
You didn't want to talk about Gilmore Girls?
What's that?
You didn't want to talk about Gilmore Girls this week?
We can a little bit if you want to dive into it a smidgen and continue to lose any credibility that we had after mentioning the Kardashians 2 weeks ago or whenever that was.
That was only last week, and
trying to block
feel
it out.
like that the comments that were made were extremely justified. So we don't have to talk about Gilmore Girls. I just will say that for most of its run was an extremely well-written and entertaining television show. So
yeah. Did you watch the what do you call it? The 4 movies that came out?
What was that? A year in the life or
something like that. Yeah, but there was 4 of them, right?
Yeah, I liked the concept. I liked some of the storylines. I didn't love the product. I don't know. It was kind of hard to watch. It kind of goes back to like, I mentioned before how much I dislike Friends, watching it now, but like watching that Gilmore Girls revival or whatever you want to call it, like I'm like, maybe this show wasn't as good as what I remember, and that kind of takes away from it. But then if I see a rerun or something on TV and I'll watch, I'm like, well, that was pretty. I feel like it was pretty good. But I don't think that even though like fans were like clamoring for that revival, it didn't really do anything for me. Like I felt like the series itself and the way it ended, that was enough for me. I didn't need that that whole production. And when people talk about, there should be another one, I'm like, no, I feel like you've done enough damage. We can all move on from it. So when I talk about Gilmore Girls, like to myself in my head, I don't really like count the revival or whatever you want to call it. That to me wasn't completely true to the characters. Like Rory, especially, she was going through some stuff, I guess, but everything that happened in those 4 seasons, it was kind of rough to watch. But I think that's also part of what people experience in their 20s, and they're still trying to figure things out. But the one thing that really stuck out to me was, she had been told by Logan's dad that she wasn't cut out for like a career in journalism. Mm-hmm. And then you like think back on that and you're like, oh my gosh, was he right? And that was like really the only thing that was like really like stuck out to me about, seeing all of that was, that that comment that he made. But I said I didn't have much to say about Gilmore Girls, and here we are several
I
minutes
started
later.
to say for not having a lot to say, you just said a lot.
That's kind of how things go for me.
But yeah, I mean, it's not typically the kind of show I would normally watch, but I watched it a lot and thought it was insanely well written, as you said. And I'll pretty much watch anything Lauren Graham is in because
she's really good.
She's really good, and she was perfect for that role. And I thought she was good in Parenthood. That was another show. If she's in it, I'm probably going to watch it.
Yeah, and I have good reason to have watched it because that was on when I was like in junior high and high school, and I was the age of Rory, and then we're both going into journalism, so it's a little bit weird that you watched it. It makes sense for me though. I'm just saying.
Nice shot. Did you know you wanted to be a sports writer that early?
I didn't ever plan to be a sports writer. We can talk about that on another podcast.
Oh wow! All right.
I definitely wanted to go into journalism whenever I was in high school. My senior year, I was newspaper editor. We had our school had a quarterly newsletter for alumni that we put together, and then monthly newspaper for students, and I started doing that and I really enjoyed it. So it was during my senior year when things were really clicking for me, and I really wanted to work in journalism, just wasn't really sure what that was going to look like, but I got a journalism scholarship to OSU, and basically not a lot of people applied for those. I'm not really sure why, but they essentially said, as long as you keep saying that your degree is journalism, you will get another scholarship. Like you'll get it basically renewed, because like a 1-year scholarship. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm just gonna do that. And so I was living in the honors dorm at OSU with a lot of, I ran into a friend at the OSU game the other day who's a doctor now. It's great for him. A lot of the people from the dorm, they're mechanical engineers, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm still doing that journalism thing. But I didn't really fit in there, which is fine. But I started working at the Poly whenever I was a freshman, and I just kind of stuck with it, but it wasn't, the sports writing stuff didn't come till much later. So, but I am celebrating this week 15 years since I was hired at the Tulsa World. I haven't aged at all, so I don't know where the 15 years went, but they went by real fast.
No kidding.
I know, it's crazy. You haven't aged either. It's crazy.
Yeah, wow.
You have gray hair, whereas I just cover the gray. I'm clearly a natural blonde.
My hair has issues. Well, you were the first one when we created that crazy overnight shift. Weren't you the first one to occupy that position?
I was kind of like a guinea pig, and I
kind of were.
So whenever I was hired, I knew at that point I wanted to write, but most of my experience from college and from my internship, most of that was editing. I needed someone to take a bit of a chance on me, and the Tulsa World was like, oh, we have this 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. position that you will have zero supervision for most of the time. But it's not going to pay great. It's very like entry level. I interviewed for that, and I don't know that anybody else wanted that job. So it worked out really well for me. I absolutely loved it. As you remember, you remember me just being cranky all the time back then, because I didn't really get a lot of sleep, but I loved that. I was 22 years old and writing stories that were going on our website. No one was really editing them because no one was working during that time. And I covered crazy stuff, but it was the best experience. Did video, took photos. It was just like, looking back, like the best first job that I could have ever asked for. Everyone has different paths that get them to where they are, but that for me was a really good experience. And I did that for 16 months, and then I got laid off, and then I somehow got back on the track. And wound up where I am now. But at that time, I was so excited to be working, and I still am. I still love working at the Tulsa World. I have to say that, but I just remember like my first day at the Tulsa World. I didn't have to work at 3 a.m. that day, but you go through all the HR stuff. I just remember like, having grown up reading a newspaper every day, and anytime you see a movie or anything about journalism and people are in a newsroom, just like being so excited to be in a newsroom and experience that. I just remember like that was so exciting. It just, the only downside for me was most days I was like, for most of my shift, I was in the newsroom by myself, but it would be so exciting when people would start coming in at like, 9 or 10 in the morning, and we'd have a little bit of an overlap. But I just would come to the newsroom and track everything that happened overnight, and just write my own stories. And here's Layla. Okay,
there's the cat appearance.
There's the cat. We just had, if we just wait long enough, there will be a cat appearance.
Was that Layla?
That was Layla. Yeah.
Okay.
Here she comes again.
There she is again.
She's like, no one's paying attention to me. Could you not?
Yep. All right.
So yeah, that's how I got here.
Huh. All right. Well,
I'm still here. It's crazy.
Well, you're still here. We'll talk more history next week. But I'm gonna give you a TV assignment.
Oh gosh.
That you have until next Wednesday to fulfill. I want you to watch one episode of Yellowstone. You got to do it.
Probably the first episode.
Probably so, but that one is like 2 hours long. It's a double episode.
Do I have to watch all of it? Okay, here's a different question. I'll watch all of it, but is it something that I need to be like, could I do something else during that time, or do I need to be like really focused on it?
It's not like an Aaron Sorkin show where the dialogue is so rapid you can't keep up unless you're 100% focused. It's not like that.
Okay.
It's almost, I would dare say, the exact opposite. It's
kind of slow.
It's not slow. It's just not.
In my head, it's slow.
I
haven't watched it, but I'm just imagining that it's slow.
No, I promise. It's like every word. It's perfectly written in that it's not overwritten. It's the dialogue is legit. But could you multitask watching it? Probably.
It's hard for me to find 2 hours to just be like, I would be on my phone during that time, like I'd like scrolling or like interacting.
You could do that, but the acting's. I mean, Kevin Costner's obviously the headliner, but anything
with Kevin Costner, like I should be able to get through.
You should be, yeah, but he's not the only one. Like there's some other. Everybody's great in it. The acting's really, really good. I think Cole Hauser is awesome in it. And
how many seasons are there now?
I think it's November 13th. They start season 5, I believe.
Oh gosh, okay. The last thing I need is to like be really into a show with a lot of episodes. Like I mean, it's football season. I have to get stuff done.
True, but streaming show seasons are like 10 episodes. I mean, you can power through.
Okay. As long as if it's like, but I like the like short episodes, like seasons that like I watch weird stuff like Never Have I Ever, which is like a teen drama comedy that Mindy Kaling created and produced. I think all of those things are true. I like that because it's pretty mindless and you don't have to pay super close attention. All the episodes are short and it's only 10 episodes in a season. So like I could like knock out a few in a day and like literally have like accomplished nothing during that time. I don't like anything that like requires me to pay close attention because I'll lose interest so fast. If I'm not paying close attention and something important happened, I'm gonna be like, do I need to rewind this or do I just move on? I struggle with TV. I just like things that are dumb and you're not going to think about later.
All right.
But I will watch an episode of your show.
Watch it and then I'll be very interested to see what you think, but to hear you explain what you just said, you might not make it through 2 hours.
I'm going to do my very best.
Do your best. And I'd love
But I will say next week isn't a game week, so I should be able to find a couple hours in my schedule.
You can find 2 hours. Okay. All right. we're getting out of here. So you can download us for free at Google, Apple, and Spotify. And check in next week when we'll talk a little OSU football. And you never know what TV show we might bring up.
We're going to have to talk about Yellowstone next week, so whatever.
That's right. We'll recap Yellowstone now that Kelly has some homework. All right. Appreciate the knowledge. We'll check in next week.
Sounds good.
All right.